So we open up this chapter kind of a little mixed feelings, probably like you've been feeling during the whole book. We find out that Morrie can no longer wipe his own butt when he goes to the restroom. Okay, and I must admit, for someone like me, this kind of sounds horrific. At first, that's kind of what Morrie said. He said he knew that things were going to be really bad when he could no longer do that anymore. But instead of being sad about it, he said he has tried his best to enjoy his dependency as if he was a child again. You know, all these moments when you were completely dependent upon your parents is something that you never got to remember because, you know, from our childhood, we don't really remember a lot of things. But he said he is trying his best to enjoy it. He says it's the culture that makes it seem like we're not allowed to be dependent upon anybody. In America, we are a very individualistic culture. And he said, you know what? I've rejected that culture, the American culture, whatever's popular, my whole life. So I don't mind rejecting it now. And I think something important here is that Morrie has worked his whole life. Even in college, he worked. So I do think it's acceptable when you are medically unable to take care of yourself or when you've worked this long to give up certain things. I don't think he should be ashamed for that either.
I think a fairly simple way of demonstrating to people what the nature of this disease is if you would just show us. Try to put your glasses on.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. All right.
I can't do it.
You can't do it.
They talk about being young. And Mitch says, you know, when he looks at all these advertisements and, you know, all these products, we're all trying to conserve youth. And Morrie says, you know what? I don't buy it. Because when you're 22, you don't know anything. You're ignorant. And he said, I never want to be 22 again because I've already been 22. I've learned so many lessons since then. I never want to go back to that moment in my life. He said the only reason that people still wish they were young is because they are unfulfilled in their adult life. They look back nostalgically on their youth and maybe have some false memories, or they don't remember the struggles. They only remember the good, which is something that is very typical in our culture and our society in general. And he says that he would never want to be 22 again because he's already done that. He's already done, opened and closed that chapter of his life. And I like what he says here. He says, listen, I know what a misery being young can be. So don't tell me that it's so great. All of these kids who came to me with their struggles as a psychology professor now, their strife, their feelings of inadequacy, their sense that life was miserable so bad that they wanted to kill themselves. In addition, all the miseries, the young are not wise. They have very little understanding about life. Who wants to live every day when you don't know what's going on? When people are manipulating you, telling you to buy this perfume and you'll be beautiful, or this pair of jeans and you'll be sexy, and you believe them? It's such nonsense. He embraces his age, and I like that. That's probably why I have this gray hair and refuse to dye it. I don't see the point in it. I don't see the point in covering up my age when I know that I'm 34 years old. That's dyeing my hair brown or red or whatever is not going to change my age. And I like that about Morrie.
I talk to Charlotte almost daily now. She told me about the bad times that I rarely saw on our Tuesdays together. Now I was afraid that each Tuesday would be our last.
He hasn't been able to eat solid food for some time now, Mitch.
I'm sorry, Charlotte. I just want to bring him something, you know? Boy, maybe I shouldn't stay today, huh?
Oh, don't be silly. He's been asking for you all morning. Where's Mitch? It's Tuesday. You bring him a great deal, Mitch. You bring him so much.
So, even though I don't think that Mitch Albom completely agrees with Morrie about young and youth and beautiful and all that kind of stuff, we go to our next chapter, the 8th Tuesday. We talk about money, and we open up with an allusion of Ted Turner. And Ted Turner, it says here, I don't want my tombstone to read that I've never owned a network. And it says, Ted Turner, the billionaire media mogul, founder of CNN, who's been lamenting his inability to snatch up the CBS network. He is still a mogul, and he is still alive today. It's actually kind of interesting. He was born in Cincinnati, you know, for us people. Actually, Family Guy makes fun of him a lot, and I'm about to show you a clip.
Mr. Griffin, you're the most generous man since Ted Turner.
I'd like to announce I'm giving a gift the whole world can appreciate. I've colorized the moon.
If I had to pick 5 adjectives to describe Ted Turner, the first one would have to be brave.
He's bold, he's unconventional, he's generous, he's a very independent thinker.
He is a maverick, a competitive, speak his mind entrepreneur.
He broke every mold, he changed the world.
I consider him to be one of my best friends.
If there is a true legend, it's Ted Turner.
The media titan who pioneered 24/7 TV news devoted himself full-time to his lifelong passions, the environment and philanthropy.
He built an empire that profited, but he also put a lot back in. He honored his employees, he honored the earth, he honored the least of these in our community and beyond.
I'm going to be a fundraiser to raise more money, so everybody that's rich in the world, expect a call or a letter from me, because I'm coming after you to get money for the UN.
Ted is a true believer that a healthy, funded, supported United Nations is essential. He sees it as the best way to achieve peace and reduce poverty and help the most vulnerable, which includes children.
Well, UNICEF is the organization that's looking at every country and saying, do kids get the vaccines they need to live? Are they treated well? Do they get nutrition? And Ted's work through the UN Foundation, our work, we all believe in UNICEF and want to do anything we can to help support its mission of helping the world's children.
The real greatest joy and satisfaction of all, I think, is helping others. I think the old biblical phrase, it's more blessed to give than receive, is absolutely true.
You know what? There is nobody like Ted.
Well, Ted, you always set a leading example for people like Warren and I. You're bold, and it's amazing to see how impactful your generosity's been.
So he goes on to explain that he feels like there's a brainwashing going on in the American society. And I would agree with him, and I think it's still happening today. And he says the brainwashing is that we need to buy. We need to gobble things up. The new car, the big house, the new trip, all this stuff. We have to buy all these things to make us happy. Owning things, being rich, having money, that is the key to happiness. And I agree with him slightly, because, you know, if you get sick or something, happiness isn't going to pay the medical bill. But I think what Morrie is trying to say here is that we overdo it. We can't just be happy with our necessities. We can't be happy with the size house that we have. We want bigger. We can't be happy with the car that we have. We want newer. We can't be happy with, you know, 5 outfits. We want 12 outfits. And he says that's the brainwashing that our country does. They convince you to believe it as well. They want you to consume, which is, I mean, that is what capitalism is. It's all about consuming, and everybody's in a race to make the best product or have the most customers so they can make the most money and they can stay afloat. that's why these big businesses like Walmart, they come into small towns like ours and they shut everybody down. Walmart used to be like a product store, like clothing and stuff. And when they went to Super Walmart with the groceries, you know, my grandpa's business went out. That's Giants Market. And then IGA started hurting really bad, Prazer's IGA, and then it's out as well. Sadly, Walmart has been doing this for years. Corporate greed has been doing this for years, and that's the capitalist way. It's feeding into corporate greed. But he says, you know, he doesn't buy it. Mitch, he tells us that Morrie takes pleasure in simple things. Laughing, dancing, listening to music, songs, helping others, listening to others, and helping others. So Morrie also goes on to tell us that he is spending his last days helping others. And he says, you know, I'm dying, right? Why do you think it's so important for me to hear other people's problems? You know, because giving to other people is what makes me feel alive. So even though Morrie is dying, he is still taking his time to hear other people. You know, he is a psychology professor. So this is what he does for a living. And he's still hearing other people. And, you know, Mitch kind of asks him, you know, you're on your deathbed. Why are you taking this time to still listen to people, still listen to people's problems? And he said, because that's what makes me feel alive. I like helping people. I love helping people. And he says, which he has quoted earlier in the text, he said, remember what I said about finding a meaningful life. I wrote it down and now I can recite it. Devote yourselves to loving others. Devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. And devote yourself to the community around you. He thinks that to live a good life, you should be living to help others and loving others. And that will all come back to you, sort of kismet or karma, whatever you want to say. It will come back to you. If you help others and love others, that will come back. And to bounce back on the money thing, first part of the chapter, he said, I'm on my deathbed right now. He says, he has Lou Gehrig's disease, he has ALS. There's no amount of money that can fix that. I mean, money can give him the oxygen that he needs to breathe. Money can give him the food that he needs to eat. But when it comes down to it, there is no cure for ALS right now. And during the writing of this book. So all that money in the world won't stop it. And that's how it always is when we come to die. No amount of money in the world will save you when it is your time to go. But he said in his last moments, what is keeping him hanging on, what is kind of slowly saving him, is helping others. Money doesn't mean anything to him now, but he can still help others. He can still talk to others, and he can still love others. And they can show that love and that helpfulness back.
You do a radio show how often?
5 days a week.
You write books, you lecture. And in your spare time, you are a saint. You notice people who need help and you find ways to help them.
That's accurate, what you just said. I notice people who need help, and I try to find the time to help them. Are you here to see a doctor?
I want to get shot.
Okay, no shots today.
It's hard not to notice in Detroit, where Mitch Albom has lived for 30 years. Homeless children, for example, whose mothers are afraid to take them to the doctor when they're sick.
If you don't have an address, they can call social services, and social services will take your kids away. So we opened a clinic that asked no questions, privately done, so I don't run through the government, and we took everybody. Now we take their moms as well.
Mitch Albom has founded or supports 7 charities in Detroit alone, 1 in the Philippines, and an orphanage in Haiti where he spends 4 days of every month. What do you do at the orphanage when you're in Haiti?
The minute I get there, I'm mobbed by all the kids. It's nonstop until, thankfully, our kids go to bed at 8 because there's no electricity, and you get up at 5 with the roosters and you start all over again. It's been the most amazing experience in my life. For someone who wasn't blessed with children, this is as close as I have been able to come children of my own. I've got nieces and nephews that I adore, and they're like our kids. But these kids need me.
Okay, so in the last chapter, you saw another view of our symbol, the pink hibiscus plant, and the leaves are falling off of that. And we said earlier back in chapter 1 that that was a symbol of Morrie, and it is, because that pink hibiscus plant bloomed and it was beautiful, but now it's dying, you know, just like Morrie. And another part of like sort of plants and weather and stuff is that this chapter that we're going over now, the 9th Tuesday, we're coming into fall. And the thing about fall is that it sort of tells us a maturity level, because summer is like fun and, you know, we're having parties and all this thing. People are going outside. People are in a lot better mood in the summer. And now we've kind of grown from that and we're transitioning to our most mature time. And then like sort of the final season in literature, like as a literature trope, is winter, and that indicates to us death and dying. And then spring, of course, because all the plants come back, spring is rebirth. So if you think of it like the life cycle, spring is childhood, summer is teen, fall is adulthood, and winter is old age, if you want to see it like that. So Morrie is starting to get significantly bad. He doesn't move from his chair much. His physical health is declining, and Ted Koppel and Nightline has contacted him again to do a story. And he said, yeah, you should probably come out, you know, as soon as possible. And they said, well, we want to wait. They want to wait until you're a little bit more dead, is basically what he's saying. Now, Morrie could have taken this like Mitch did. Mitch took it very offensively. He said, I can't believe they're doing that. And Morrie could have taken it the same way, but he said, no, I'm not worried about it. And I think that's typical for adulthood. The older you get, the less you care, because you realize it's not worth all of the mental strife that goes with caring too much. But I think it also goes to show something about the viewership of this, particularly Nightline, but of anything at all. You know, people say that they hate drama, but according to what we watch on Netflix or whatever, it seems like we love drama. And the more drama, the better. And Nightline wanted to use Morrie as a tearjerker. I don't know how I feel. I think I'm a mix of Morrie and Mitch, because a part of me is like, yeah, I get it. Okay, American culture. But a part of me right there is with Mitch that says, wow, that's really crappy that they're waiting until Morrie's almost completely dead, you know, to use this piece of interview just to get viewership.
All right. In words, then, take us into it. You're more afraid now than you were a few months ago.
No, I'm less afraid.
Really?
Yep. I'm less afraid, but I'm still afraid, because I've been working on my fear. I am more concerned about going out in a way that is serene and composed. I'm more afraid of not going out that way. I'm not so afraid of the death. I'm afraid of the suffering that it might entail. And I have a little aphorism. Don't let go too soon, but don't hang on too long. Find the balance.
The very notion, Morrie, of letting go implies a degree of control.
Yep.
Do you think you have that degree of control?
I don't know. I'm going to try. What I can tell you is I'm letting go bit by bit right now of lots of things. Things I don't read the newspapers much. I don't look at TV much. I listen to music. But there are a lot of things about the world I'm letting go. I'm not letting go of the people who love me. That will be the hardest thing. thing for them and for me. I'm concerned right now with the people who come into this house, all of whom are loving people, who love me deeply and I love them. The issue then becomes, how can I keep them in line? They are pounding on my door. I don't have enough time to see them all without exhausting myself. So it's very heartwarming, but I've also got to protect myself because I am very, very easily fatigued.
And it kind of reflects back on how Mitch currently feels about the news. He's very jaded by the news. He just can't believe what's going on. He hears about all these deaths in the news. Got the O.J. Simpson trial still happening. People are absolutely obsessed with O.J. and whether or not he killed his wife. All of this sad stuff is in the news, kind of like right now. Every day there's something new, I feel like, about the coronavirus and how it's killing everybody, or everybody's getting sick. You know, some of you opted to stay home for virtual learning until we come back from Christmas break, and I think that's very smart of you because no one wants to be sick or quarantine or potentially spread the virus to their family or extended family over Christmas. You know, we shut down for Thanksgiving. Shut down meaning virtual learning. I don't know why we're not shutting down for Christmas, but I don't make the decisions. I don't get paid the big bucks to make the decisions. And I think that's also kind of how Morrie feels. He doesn't make the decisions, you know, with a Nightline or whatever. He just wants to tell his stories. He just wants to be a teacher for one last time. And he has to maybe play ball a little bit with Ted Koppel and Nightline, even though if he doesn't love it, to get his story across. And that's kind of how I feel as a teacher too. I don't love being in-person learning right now because of the virus, but I do want to be a teacher, and this is what I have to do to play ball.
When the coronavirus pandemic first struck, I found myself asking, is there anything that I can do to make some small bit of difference?
Says about being fully present. He says, I believe in fully present, and that means that you should be with the person that you're with. When I'm talking to you now, Mitch, I try to keep focused on only what's going on between us. I'm not thinking about something we said last week. I'm not thinking about what's coming up this Friday. I'm not thinking about doing another Ted Koppel show, or about the medications I'm taking, or about the news, or with your cell phone. See, you got to remember, this was filmed in the 90s, so this was before smartphones, and they did have cell phones back then. It's just not like the cell phones now. And I just wonder what Morrie would think about life in 2020 if he's saying, even in the mid-90s, that we should be more fully present with each other and to each other. You kind of have to wonder, you know, what he would think about that now. And he further goes on to talk about taking a negative situation and turning it into a positive situation. So he said, for example, in traffic, if some crazy guy driving crazy passes him, he tries to think of the positive part of it. So, you know, oh, maybe he was in a hurry and he needed to pass me, or maybe he really needs to use the bathroom and needed to pass me. His big thing, and this is one of those things that happen in adulthood as well, is don't take things personally. Don't think that the world is always out to get you. Don't always believe in every single conspiracy theory that you read on Facebook or Parlor app or whatever it is that people are on. He said, you know, sometimes people are just in a bad mood, and that's okay because we're all entitled to a bad mood. You know, he doesn't necessarily encourage it, but he's not going to take it personally if someone does something like that to him. So the big topic of this chapter is how love goes on. And Morrie remembers when his father died, Charlie Schwartz, and he had to go and identify the body. And it's not as if he didn't love his father or anything like that. But one thing that he remembers is that his father wasn't very emotional. He wasn't very kissy-touchy. He wasn't very in touch with his emotions. And we've seen that in his past memories when he sort of rushed in the stepmom, Ava, and sort of just tried to forget about his first wife and mother of his children. And Morrie is determined to not let that happen with the people that he encounters in his life and his sons. His big thing is that when we are gone, our physical body, our life is gone. The thing that goes on forever, the way that we last forever, is through love. That's how we last forever. And he is determined to make sure that his sons know that he loved him, and everybody that he came in contact with loved him. You know, even the person that passed him on the highway and he said he wanted to give him the finger, but he just smiled and waved, and a lot of times they also smiled and waved. He wanted to be positive, and he wanted to exude positivity to other people. That's how he wants to be remembered, and that's how he wants to go on. And I think when you look at this book and how many people have read this book, and it was New York Times bestseller and all this stuff, I think Mitch Albom has done a really good job about making sure that Morrie's legacy does go on forever. And, you know, it's just as much Morrie as it is Mitch, because if Morrie wasn't such a cool dude, if he wasn't such a great guy, then no one would have ever wrote this book about him. So they're 50-50 on this, I think, on Morrie's personality and his lessons and his love going on forever.
So who wins?
Love. Love always wins. You don't believe that?
I don't know, maybe I don't. I mean, have you looked at the news lately? Love's not exactly racking up the gold medals out there.
Maybe the game isn't over yet.
All right, so this chapter we're talking about marriage, which is maybe not something that's on your mind because, you know, you're teenagers, but maybe for your future, you know, looking ahead. And I, for one, married and divorced. And Morrie says the big thing about this generation, Mitch's generation, the mid-90s, and I still think it's resonant for today, is that people don't respect or value marriage. They don't value the team work that goes into it. Morrie and Charlotte very much work together, and Mitch has made that apparent. Charlotte's a lot more private than Morrie, which I think is typical in a lot of marriages because opposites do attract. You know, typically it's not twins that get married, it's, you know, two puzzle pieces fitting together. And Charlotte, you know, she helps Morrie with his sickness, but also just with partnership. You know, they raise kids together, they're companions with each other. And Morrie said people of this generation, the 90s, and, you know, further generations, big problems is that they're selfish and they rush into marriage. And it's almost like they want the idea of marriage. They like the idea of marriage, but they don't want to work for it. And they're selfish because it's always about me, me, me. What can I have? What can I have? Now, with that being said, I think it's very important that you are happy in a marriage or a relationship. You know, since you guys are teenagers, I think relationships are important too. But it's not all about you. It's about the team and the community, which is the community of your marriage or your family, which is exactly what Morrie has been saying since the beginning of the novel. He says the biggest parts about marriage, the most important things about marriage in his mind is compromise, respect, communication, and values. And knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, I guess, with that metaphor with cards. And, you know, he reveals to us that, you know, there are some things that he doesn't want to say because Charlotte might be uncomfortable with that. You know, he would be comfortable saying it, but Charlotte might not. And that is part of that respect and that compromise. He might want to say it, she doesn't. He respects her enough to compromise to not say it. He's not compromising anything major about himself, or else they probably would have never got married. But, you know, he makes little compromises here and there to keep her happy, and he communicates with her so they know. But they share a lot of the same values. Obviously, they raise their kids together. You know, they've been married for over 40 years. They met as students. That's the big thing in marriage, is the values. You can disagree on little things here and there, favorite foods, whatever. Just as long as you respect each other and honor each other, I think that's the key to marriage. Mitch, he's not so good in his marriage, and he says that he's not so good with emotions at all. He doesn't let himself feel emotions, whether they're good or bad, happy or sad. We meet Mitch's wife, and Morrie meets Mitch's wife, Mitch Albom, in this chapter. And she's a singer, and we find out that Morrie is a little bit of a flirt. I don't even know if I call it flirt as much as just like, I mean, Mitch calls it flirt. I just think it's him being kind and complimenting her. It's okay to tell someone that they're beautiful. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're flirting with them. You know, people get really happy when you compliment them. Anyways, so we see Janine, and Mitch did not expect her to respond the way she does. Morrie asks her to sing, and he's like, oh, you know, she never sings for anyone like that. And she sang for Morrie. And he said that Morrie has a way, he's a knack with people like that, bringing out even the most private of their personality, because he makes people feel comfortable, and he makes people feel like they can trust him. They can trust Morrie. And he expected, Mitch expected his wife Janine to be maybe a little standoffish, maybe a little shy, because she wasn't used to seeing all this medical material and seeing someone literally on their deathbed from ALS. But she actually responded really well. And it went really awesome with Morrie, because he loved it, she loved it, and it was a really welcoming moment for Mitch. The two people that he loves the most together in harmony, hanging out.
Library time. Hey, how's he doing today?
Not so good. You can put the food in the kitchen, and I'll go get him.
Connie? I'd like you to meet Janine.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry, honey. So many people come through that door. Sometimes I forget my manners. Very nice to meet you.
All right, let's see. Can you take some of this stuff off this table for me, please? You can just put it right up there. You all right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be fine. The two people I love most are finally gonna meet each other.
All right, here we go.
Well, there's my buddy.
Hey, Coach. How you doing today?
All right. What'd you bring today?
I have some grape leaves.
Oh, boy.
I got some pasta salad. Nice warm pita bread.
Oh, you always bring the right things.
I brought something else with me today, Coach. Morrie. This is Janine.
Yeah, Janine. Can I tell you something? You're as lovely as your name.
Thank you.
Morrie, tell Janine the story you told me about the ocean.
The ocean? Oh, the little wave?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sweet little story. See, there's this little wave, and he's out there bobbing up and down and having a grand old time. Oh, just enjoying the sunshine and the wind.
Until he sees the other waves.
Yeah. He sees the other waves crashing into the shore, so he gets scared. And another wave sees him and
he's
says,
like, oh, my God, look at what's going to happen to me.
Does he do this to you? I'm trying to tell a story here.
I'm sorry.
And another wave says to him, why do you look so sad? And the little wave says, because we're going to crash. All us waves are going to be nothing. Don't you understand? And the other wave says, you don't understand. You're not a wave. You're part of the ocean. Part of the ocean.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Thank you. Mitch tells me you're a wonderful singer, a professional.
Well, I mostly sing backup.
Backup?
Yeah, background, you know? The humming and the oohing that makes the singer sound good, but she's not really going to do that anymore.
Oh, you don't like the humming and oohing?
No, it's just that she's going to be the one out front now.
I like singing, any kind.
Yeah, but let somebody else back her up.
I don't feel like I have to be number one. What's wrong with being number two?
Oh, would you sing for me?
You know what, Coach? Everybody asks her that. I'll tell you what, she's recording now. I'll bring you a tape next time.
Wouldn't that be nice? Would you excuse us for a few minutes?
Excuse me?
Yeah, just go make some phone calls or something like that, would you?
Sure.
Bye.
Hey.
Oh, hi.
No, please don't get up. You look exhausted.
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do.
I told you there'd be tears.
Mitch doesn't believe in tears. I'll get to him someday.
You ever gonna tell me what you talked about?
He told me how much you love dancing.
That's all?
No. Mostly he let me talk.
So many times I've heard you sing. Never like that.
We also see a biblical allusion in this chapter, and it's of Job from the Bible. And basically what happens to Job is that God takes everything away from him, his money, his home, his family, and everything, to make him feel, you know, more humble and bring him closer to God. And this is in here for kind of comedic relief. We're starting to get to some really super sad chapters in the book because Morrie is dying. He's on his last leg. And I think Mitch Albom put this in here to kind of give us a small giggle because things are starting to get really, really heavy, maybe a little bit more heavy than they were in the beginning. I mean, this whole book is heavy, but it's starting to get even worse now. And he still wants to bring a little bit of happiness. They actually do this in scary movies too. So I'm actually just going to close this video with a small little clip of Mitch Albom doing an interview about some of his other books that he's written.
I always have a problem when people say, oh, you write about dying. I said, no. People who write about serial killers write about dying. In my books, usually one person dies. It usually happens in a paragraph or a half a page, and the rest of the book is about that person's life, because it's really hard to get people to think about how it matters until you remind them that it's not going to go on forever.